A figure stands at the edge of the Irish cliffs, silhouetted against the gunmetal sky. The wind catches her raven-black hair, a stark contrast to the expected auburn ginger that tourists associate with Ireland. She is one of thousands who carry what locals have termed Black Irish features. Dark hair, dark eyes, olive skin that rarely burns despite the northern latitude. For centuries, these physical traits have been explained away with folktales of shipwrecked Spanish Armada sailors or wandering Mediterranean traders. But Dr. Olivia Kennedy knows better. The truth lies buried not in shipwrecks or folklore, but in the microscopic coils of DNA that tell a far stranger story, one that begins not in Spain or Italy, but in the most unexpected place of all. The first time I sequenced my own genome, she says, looking out over the churning Atlantic, I discovered something that should not have been there, a genetic signature that makes no sense given what we know about human migration patterns. Her voice carries no hint of exaggeration, only the measured certainty of a scientist who has glimpsed something that rewrites history. What Dr. Kennedy found was a genetic marker previously undocumented in European populations, a snippet of code that appears in less than 0.01% of global genetic samples, and exclusively in those bearing the physical traits associated with the Black Irish. This genetic signature, designated haplogroup X7R, appears nowhere in the vast genetic databases spanning Europe, the Mediterranean, or the Middle East. Its only match? Ancient human remains discovered in unexpected locations across the North American continent, dating back over 12,000 years. We thought we understood human migration. We were wrong, she says, turning from the cliff edge. The Black Irish carry a genetic memory of something impossible, something that changes everything we thought we knew about who arrived in the Americas first, who truly discovered the New World, and why a population in Western Ireland carries the genetic echo of that journey. The wind gusts harder as if punctuating her words. How could ancient American DNA find its way into the genetic makeup of an Irish population? And why has this genetic signature remained hidden, clustered among a specific phenotype that locals have long regarded with a mixture of fascination and suspicion? The answer begins 15,000 years ago, with a journey across ice rather than water, and ends with a return voyage that history never recorded until now. The term Black Irish has permeated Irish cultural identity for centuries, referring to Irish people with dark features distinctly different from the stereotypical pale, freckled, red-haired appearance often associated with the country. Traditional explanations have pointed to Spanish origins, particularly the Spanish Armada theory, that survivors from shipwrecked Spanish vessels integrated into Irish coastal communities after the failed invasion of England in 1588. Others suggested Phoenician traders, Mediterranean wanderers, or even a connection to the Basque regions. Dr. Adrian Thomas, geneticist at Trinity College Dublin, explains the problem with these theories. The timeline simply does not work. Genetic changes require generations to become established within a population. If the Spanish Armada theory were true, we would see a genetic pattern reflecting Iberian ancestry from approximately 400 years ago, clustering around coastal regions where shipwrecks occurred. Instead, what researchers have found paints a far different picture. The genetic markers associated with the Black Irish phenotype appear to be far older, thousands, not hundreds of years in the making. And they do not match Iberian, Mediterranean, or Middle Eastern patterns as would be expected. The first hint that something unusual was occurring came in 2015, when the Irish DNA Atlas Project began collecting genetic samples from individuals whose 4 grandparents had all been born within 50 kilometers of each other. This approach allowed researchers to create a genetic map of Ireland with extraordinary resolution, revealing subtle population structures that had previously gone undetected. We expected to find Viking influences in coastal areas, Norman genetic signatures in the east, and ancient Celtic patterns throughout, explains Dr. Kennedy, who joined the project in 2018. What we did not expect was to find genetic markers that matched no known European population, markers that appeared exclusively in individuals with the Black Irish phenotype and predominantly clustered in western coastal regions, particularly Galway, Mayo, and Kerry. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Kennedy, pursuing an unrelated research question, compared these anomalous markers against global genetic databases. I was looking for potential matches in North Africa, thinking perhaps there was a Moorish connection we had overlooked, she recalls. On a whim, I ran the markers against ancient DNA samples from archaeological sites across North America. The computer returned a match so perfect that I assumed I had made an error. She had not. The genetic signature present in Black Irish populations matched DNA extracted from ancient human remains discovered in archaeological sites across North America, primarily concentrated in the northeastern regions of the continent. These remains dated between 15,000 and 9,000 years ago, a period corresponding to the earliest known human settlements in North America, when the Bering Land Bridge still connected Asia to Alaska and glacial ice sheets were only beginning their great retreat. Most significantly, these markers appeared in remains that predated the well-established Clovis culture, which for decades was considered to represent the earliest human presence in the Americas. The Black Irish carried genetic echoes of a people who were in North America even before that. We had to face an extraordinary possibility, Dr. Thomas explains, leaning forward intently. Either there was an ancient migration from North America to Ireland, something completely undocumented in the archaeological record, or both populations descended from a common ancestor that has disappeared from the historical record elsewhere. To understand the implications of this discovery, we need to journey back to the last ice age, when the world looked drastically different from today. Massive ice sheets covered much of North America and northern Europe. Sea levels were dramatically lower, exposing land bridges that today lie submerged beneath ocean waters. Human populations were sparse, nomadic, and constantly adapting to harsh, changing environments. The prevailing narrative of human migration into the Americas has focused on the Bering Land Bridge, a vast expanse of land connecting present-day Siberia with Alaska, exposed when sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today. According to this model, people from northeastern Asia crossed this bridge between 20,000 and 15,000 years ago, gradually spreading southward as glaciers retreated. However, in recent decades, this simplified model has faced challenges. Archaeological discoveries throughout the Americas have repeatedly pushed back the date of human arrival, with sites in Chile, Brazil, and the eastern United States yielding dates that strain the timeline of the Bering Land Bridge theory. What we are finding, explains Dr. Elias Morgan, paleogeneticist at the University of California, is evidence of multiple migration waves into the Americas, potentially using different routes and representing distinct populations. The genetic diversity of these earliest Americans was far greater than we previously understood. One of these populations, now designated as the Ancient North Eurasian ANE group, appears to have contributed genetic material to both Native Americans and Europeans, but in very different proportions. Most European populations show ANE ancestry at rates between 10 to 20%, while some Native American populations show rates as high as 40%. But the X7R haplogroup found in the Black Irish represents something else entirely, a specific genetic signature found almost exclusively in pre-Clovis remains in North America, and now, mysteriously, in this subpopulation of Irish people with distinctive physical features. The only explanation that fits the genetic data, Dr. Kennedy says, is that a population carrying this genetic marker existed in North America at least 15,000 years ago. Somehow, representatives of this population or a closely related group made their way to Ireland, bringing these unique genetic markers with them. But how? The Atlantic Ocean presents a formidable barrier between North America and Ireland, particularly during the Ice Age when conditions were even harsher than today. Most archaeologists have long dismissed the possibility of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, with the notable exception of the well-documented Norse settlements in Newfoundland around 1000 CE. To answer this question, Dr. Kennedy and her team turned to an emerging field, archaeogenetics, the application of genetic analysis to archaeological remains. They began systematically analyzing ancient DNA from human remains found throughout coastal regions of Ireland, particularly focusing on Western sites dating to the Mesolithic period, approximately 10,000 to 6,000 years ago. Their findings were startling. The X7R haplogroup appeared in Irish remains dating to approximately 9,800 years ago. Just as the last ice age was ending, sea levels were rising, and modern coastal outlines were forming. But the marker was not widespread. It appeared concentrated in specific burial sites along the western coast. What we are seeing, explains Dr. Thomas, is evidence of a small founder population, perhaps just a few dozen individuals, who arrived in Ireland approximately 10,000 years ago, carrying this distinctive genetic signature. Their descendants remained somewhat genetically isolated, explaining why the trait persisted in a recognizable form to the present day. But this discovery only deepened the mystery. How could a small group from North America cross the Atlantic Ocean 10,000 years ago, long before conventional maritime technology existed? The answer may lie not in technological sophistication, but in the drastically different geography of the Ice Age world. During the last glacial maximum, approximately 20,000 years ago, sea levels were so low that the continental shelf extending from North America was exposed, creating a vastly different coastline. More significantly, the North Atlantic was characterized by extensive sea ice, potentially creating a pathway, albeit an extraordinarily challenging one, between North America and Europe. We need to reconsider what was possible, argues Dr. Morgan. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that humans were traversing significant distances along ice edges as early as 45,000 years ago. The presence of human remains in the Arctic dating to 24,000 years ago demonstrates that these populations possessed sophisticated cold-weather technology and survival skills. The theory that has emerged, the Solutrean hypothesis, suggests that humans equipped with technology adapted for ice edge hunting could have navigated along the southern edge of the North Atlantic ice sheet, moving from the eastern coast of North America to Europe. Originally proposed to explain similarities between Solutrean stone tools in Europe and Clovis points in America, this hypothesis has been largely rejected by mainstream archaeology. But the genetic evidence from the Black Irish has forced scientists to reconsider. We are not suggesting an easy journey, clarifies Dr. Kennedy. What we are saying is that it was physically possible, and the genetic evidence indicates it actually happened. A small group with this distinctive genetic signature made this journey and reached Ireland, where their descendants remain today. The research team has named this hypothetical journey the Ice Edge Migration, and evidence supporting it has gradually accumulated. Stone tools discovered on the continental shelf off the coast of Virginia, now submerged but exposed during the Ice Age, bear striking similarities to tools found in Mesolithic sites in Western Ireland. Carbon dating places both sets of artifacts within a few hundred years of each other, approximately 10,000 years ago. Perhaps most compellingly, recent advances in ancient DNA analysis have allowed researchers to extract genetic material from these stone tools. DNA left behind in microscopic blood residues and hand oils preserved in the porous surface of the stone. These genetic signatures match the X7R haplogroup found in the Black Irish. The tools tell the same story as the genes, says Dr. Thomas. A connection existed between North America and Ireland approximately 10,000 years ago, a connection that conventional history has completely missed. But this scientific breakthrough raises as many questions as it answers. If a population successfully navigated from North America to Ireland, why is there no record of this journey in oral traditions or archaeological evidence beyond these genetic markers and stone tools? And why did this migration appear to occur in only one direction, with no evidence of return journeys? The answers may lie in the catastrophic climate changes occurring during this period. As the Ice Age ended, sea levels rose dramatically, in some regions by more than a meter per century. Coastal settlements were inundated, forcing continuous inland migration and disrupting cultural continuity. Imagine a small group of explorers reaching Ireland, only to find themselves cut off from their homeland as sea levels rose and ice bridges melted, suggests Dr. Kennedy. Their descendants would have integrated with local populations, their origin story eventually fading into myth or being lost entirely as they adapted to their new environment. This hypothesis gained unexpected support from an analysis of Irish mythology. Several ancient Irish texts refer to a mysterious people called the Tuatha Dé Danann, described as having arrived in Ireland from distant northern islands. While traditionally interpreted as purely mythological, some scholars now suggest these stories might preserve a cultural memory of actual migration events. Dr. Fiona Reynolds, ethnographer specializing in Celtic mythology, notes intriguing parallels. The Tuatha Dé Danann are described as having magical powers and advanced technology, arriving in dark clouds. They are associated with stone circles and are said to have eventually retreated underground, becoming the fairy folk of later Irish tradition. While highly mythologized, these accounts could represent cultural memories of an actual population with distinctive physical features and technological capabilities that appeared suddenly in Ireland. Most significantly, in some versions of these myths, the Tuatha De Danann are described as dark-haired and dark-eyed, physical features that align with the modern Black Irish phenotype. But Dr. Kennedy and her team were about to discover that the genetic story of the Black Irish held an even more startling revelation, one that would challenge our understanding not just of human migration patterns, but of human cognitive capabilities in the distant past. The turning point came when the research team expanded their analysis to include additional genetic markers associated with the X7R haplogroup. They discovered that this distinctive genetic signature was frequently accompanied by another unusual genetic variant, a mutation in the FOXP2 gene, often referred to as the language gene. FOXP2 plays a crucial role in human speech and language capabilities. Mutations in this gene have been associated with severe speech disorders, and the gene shows evidence of strong positive selection in the human lineage, meaning that genetic variants that enhanced linguistic ability were heavily favored by natural selection as humans evolved. The specific FOXP2 variant found in the Black Irish population is exceptionally rare in modern humans. However, it appears in high frequency among individuals with the X7R haplogroup, suggesting these genetic markers traveled together through time. What makes this FOXP2 variant so fascinating, explains Dr. Morgan, is that it appears to enhance certain aspects of linguistic processing, particularly related to the acquisition of tonal languages and spatial temporal concepts. In laboratory tests, individuals with this variant demonstrate enhanced ability to distinguish subtle tonal differences and process complex grammatical structures involving time and space. This discovery led the research team to an extraordinary hypothesis. The population that carried the X7R haplogroup to Ireland possessed enhanced linguistic capabilities specifically adapted to their migratory lifestyle, capabilities that may have facilitated complex navigation, environmental mapping, and the transmission of geographical knowledge across generations. We believe we are seeing evidence of cognitive specialization, says Dr. Kennedy. This population evolved specific neural adaptations that enhance their ability to navigate across vast distances, remember complex topographical information, and communicate this knowledge to others. These abilities would have been crucial for a group undertaking the incredibly challenging journey from North America to Ireland along ice edges. To test this hypothesis, the research team conducted cognitive studies on modern individuals carrying both the X7R haplogroup and the associated FOXP2 variant. The results were remarkable. These individuals consistently outperformed control groups on tests measuring spatial navigation, mental mapping, and the ability to learn symbolic systems representing geographical information. Most intriguingly, they showed particular facility with a form of spatial grammar that linguists call absolute reference frames. The ability to maintain consistent orientation regardless of one's position or perspective. While most modern European languages rely heavily on relative reference frames, left/right, front/back, absolute reference frames, north/south, upstream/downstream, are more common in indigenous languages from regions where precise navigation is essential for survival. This suggests that the ancestors of the Black Irish spoke a language fundamentally different from Indo-European languages, explains linguistic anthropologist Dr. Maya Chan. Their language would have encoded geographic information in its very structure, allowing them to maintain precise orientation across vast distances, a crucial ability for anyone attempting to navigate along the edge of an ice sheet across the North Atlantic. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond the origins of the Black Irish. They suggest that human cognitive capabilities have been shaped not just by general evolutionary pressures, but by specific environmental challenges faced by different populations. The ancestors of the Black Irish appear to have developed specialized neural adaptations for navigation and spatial processing, adaptations that persist in their descendants today. But the most profound implication comes from the timing of this migration. If a population successfully navigated from North America to Ireland approximately 10,000 years ago, they did so millennia before conventional maritime technology is thought to have existed. This suggests that ancient humans possessed capabilities far beyond what conventional archaeology has attributed to them. We have consistently underestimated our ancestors, argues Dr. Thomas. The evidence increasingly suggests that ancient humans were capable of remarkable feats of navigation, environmental adaptation, and knowledge transmission. They were not simply reacting to their environment. They were actively exploring it, mapping it, and conquering its challenges through both technological and cognitive innovation. This perspective aligns with recent archaeological discoveries that have repeatedly pushed back the timeline for complex human behaviors. Stone tools found in Saudi Arabia date to 85,000 years ago, suggesting human presence there 30,000 years earlier than previously thought. Cave paintings in Indonesia date to at least 45,500 years ago, rivaling the oldest European cave art. Watercraft use in Southeast Asia appears to date back at least 45,000 years. The consistent pattern is that when we discover new evidence about human capabilities in the distant past, that evidence reveals greater sophistication, not less, notes Dr. Morgan. The Black Irish genetic signature is another piece of this puzzle. Evidence that humans were capable of transatlantic navigation 10,000 years ago, millennia before we thought such journeys were possible. But if ancient humans were capable of such remarkable feats, why is evidence so sparse? Why do we not see clearer archaeological signatures of these achievements? The answer likely lies in the catastrophic climate changes that occurred as the Ice Age ended. Rising sea levels inundated coastal regions where these populations primarily lived, submerging their settlements, artifacts, and cultural evidence beneath hundreds of feet of water. The continental shelves, now lying underwater, were once vast coastal plains where human populations thrived. Almost all archaeological evidence from these regions has been lost. We are looking for archaeological evidence in all the wrong places, suggests Dr. Kennedy. The real story of human prehistory lies underwater, on the continental shelves that were exposed during the Ice Age. That's where these coastal adapted, highly mobile populations lived, and that's where evidence of their achievements remains, largely inaccessible to conventional archaeology. Recent underwater archaeological expeditions have begun to support this view. Submerged sites off the coast of Florida, California, and the British Isles have yielded stone tools, hearths, and even structure foundations dating to the period when sea levels were significantly lower. These findings suggest that coastal regions, now underwater, were centers of human innovation and cultural development. The Black Irish genetic signature may represent one of the few pieces of evidence that survived this great inundation, a living record of achievements that have otherwise been erased from the archaeological record. And it raises a profound question. What other chapters of human prehistory remain to be discovered? As researchers continue to analyze the Black Irish genetic signature, they have uncovered yet another layer to this extraordinary story. The X7R haplogroup appears to be associated with distinctive adaptations to cold environments and marine resources, adaptations that would have been crucial for a population navigating along ice edges. These adaptations include enhanced ability to metabolize omega-3 fatty acids found in marine mammals, increased capacity to generate body heat, and greater resistance to the psychological effects of limited daylight. Collectively, these traits constitute what researchers now call the Arctic navigator phenotype, a suite of adaptations that would have enabled survival in one of Earth's most challenging environments. These people were not just cognitively specialized for navigation, explains Dr. Morgan. Their entire physiology was adapted for the environment they inhabited, the edge between land, sea, and ice, where extreme conditions demanded extreme adaptations. Archaeological evidence suggests that this population was highly specialized for hunting marine mammals, particularly seals and small whales that would have been abundant along ice edges. Their toolkits included distinctive harpoon technologies that appear in both North American and Irish archaeological sites dating to approximately 10,000 years ago. They followed the ice and the animals that lived along its edge, says Dr. Thomas. As the ice retreated northward at the end of the Ice Age, they followed it, constantly adapting to changing conditions. Some moved into the interior of North America, integrating with other populations. Others continued following the ice edge eastward, eventually reaching Ireland. This lifestyle, following marine mammals along the boundaries between ice, land, and sea, would have given them intimate knowledge of navigation by currents, winds, and ice conditions. They would have developed sophisticated understanding of seasonal patterns and animal migrations. Most importantly, they would have possessed boats capable of operating in partial ice conditions, technology essential for survival in their environment. We tend to think of maritime technology as developing very late, notes nautical archaeologist Dr. Susan Harper. But the evidence increasingly suggests that ice-edge-adapted populations had sophisticated boats from very early times. Their survival depended on it. Recent experiments with reconstructed prehistoric boats have demonstrated that even simple skin boats, properly constructed, are capable of remarkable seaworthiness. When used by navigators with intimate knowledge of currents, winds, and ice conditions, such vessels could potentially have completed the journey from North America to Ireland by island-hopping along now-submerged banks and shoals that existed when sea levels were lower. The journey would have been extraordinarily challenging, acknowledges Dr. Harper. But for a population specifically adapted to ice-edge environments, with specialized boats and navigational knowledge, it would have been within the realm of possibility. And the genetic evidence tells us it happened. But perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of the Black Irish genetic signature is what it reveals about human cognitive capabilities. The distinctive FOXP2 variant associated with this population appears to enhance not just spatial navigation, but also certain forms of symbolic thinking, particularly the ability to create and interpret abstract representations of space and time. Cognitive tests on individuals carrying this genetic variant show enhanced ability to process certain types of symbolic systems, precisely the cognitive skill that would be necessary for maintaining navigational knowledge across generations without written language. These people likely possess systems for encoding geographical knowledge that we can barely comprehend today, suggests Dr. Chun. Not maps as we understand them, but possibly complex symbolic systems that encoded information about currents, winds, star positions, and animal migrations in forms that could be memorized and transmitted orally. Such systems would have constituted a form of specialized knowledge, potentially restricted to specific individuals within the group who served as navigators and knowledge keepers. This pattern of specialized knowledge transmission appears in many indigenous maritime cultures, where navigational expertise is treated as sacred knowledge passed down through specific lineages. What we may be seeing in the Black Irish genetic signature, proposes Dr. Kennedy, is the echo of an ancient navigational priesthood, individuals who possessed specialized cognitive abilities and knowledge that enabled long-distance maritime navigation thousands of years before conventional history says it was possible. This perspective aligns with Irish folklore surrounding the Black Irish, who have traditionally been associated with mystical abilities, particularly second sight, and the ability to predict weather patterns and natural events. These folkloric associations may preserve cultural memories of the specialized knowledge and cognitive abilities that once distinguished this population. But as fascinating as these discoveries are, they raise troubling questions about why this chapter of human history has remained hidden for so long. Why has conventional archaeology been so resistant to evidence of sophisticated maritime capabilities in ancient human populations? The answer may lie in the deep-seated biases that have shaped archaeological interpretation for generations. Western archaeology emerged during the colonial era and often reflected colonial perspectives, including the assumption that technological sophistication developed primarily in Europe and the Middle East, with other regions lagging behind. There has been a systematic underestimation of the capabilities of indigenous populations, particularly those from regions colonized by European powers, argues Dr. Morgan. The idea that Native American populations might have reached Europe before Europeans discovered America challenges deeply entrenched historical narratives. This bias has affected not just the interpretation of archaeological evidence, but which questions archaeologists ask in the first place. Until recently, few researchers were investigating the possibility of pre-Columbian contact between the Americas and Europe in the eastward direction. The assumption was that such contact, if it occurred at all, would have been initiated from Europe. The Black Irish genetic signature forces us to reconsider these assumptions, says Dr. Kennedy. It provides unambiguous evidence that the movement of people and ideas was bidirectional, that Native American populations reached Europe long before Europeans reached America. This realization has profound implications for how we understand human history. It suggests that the global exchange of genes, technologies, and ideas has been occurring for far longer than conventional history acknowledges. It challenges the Eurocentric narrative that places European expansion at the center of global exploration. More fundamentally, it forces us to reconsider human capabilities in the distant past. If people could navigate from North America to Ireland 10,000 years ago, what other remarkable achievements might they have accomplished? What other chapters of human history have been lost to rising seas, climate change, and the biases of later generations? The story of the Black Irish genetic signature is still unfolding. As genetic analysis techniques continue to improve, researchers are identifying additional individuals carrying the X7R haplogroup in unexpected locations, including isolated communities in coastal Norway, the Faroe Islands, and western France. These discoveries suggest that the ancient transatlantic migration may have been more extensive than initially thought, with multiple landing sites across Western Europe. Archaeological excavations on the continental shelf, the submerged coastal regions that were exposed during the Ice Age, are yielding new evidence of sophisticated maritime cultures dating to the period when sea levels were rising rapidly. Underwater sites off the coast of Nova Scotia have revealed stone structures aligned with astronomical features, potentially representing navigational aids for maritime travelers. Most intriguingly, linguistic analysis has identified structural similarities between certain Native American language families and pre-Indo-European language substrates that survive in isolated pockets of Western Europe. These similarities include absolute reference frame systems, specialized vocabulary for ice conditions, and grammatical structures that encode precise spatial relationships, exactly the linguistic features that would facilitate long-distance navigation. We are just beginning to glimpse the true complexity of human prehistory, says Dr. Thomas. The Black Irish genetic signature has opened a door to a lost chapter of human achievement, a chapter that challenges us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about ancient human capabilities. For Dr. Olivia Kennedy, the implications are both scientific and personal. As someone who carries the X7R haplogroup herself, part of the Black Irish population she studies, the research has transformed her understanding of her own heritage. I used to think my dark hair and eyes came from Spanish sailors or Mediterranean traders, she says. Now I know I carry the genetic echo of something far more extraordinary, a journey across the Atlantic that history forgot, accomplished by people whose capabilities we have systematically underestimated. Standing once more at the cliff edge, looking out over the Atlantic toward North America, she contemplates the journey her ancestors made in the opposite direction, thousands of years ago. They navigated by stars, currents, and the migration patterns of animals. They possessed knowledge we can barely comprehend today. And they accomplished something that, according to conventional history, should have been impossible. The wind catches her dark hair, the visible manifestation of a genetic signature that rewrites history. The most important lesson of the Black Irish genetic signature, she reflects, is humility. We have consistently underestimated what our ancestors could achieve. We have assumed that technological sophistication is a purely modern phenomenon. The evidence tells a different story, that human beings have been exploring, innovating, and accomplishing remarkable feats for far longer than we have acknowledged. As the sun sets over the Atlantic, casting golden light across the same waters that ancient navigators once crossed, Dr. Kennedy contemplates the broader implications of her discovery. History is not a story of steady progress from primitive beginnings, she says. It is a complex tapestry of achievements, setbacks, and lost knowledge. The Black Irish remind us that some of the most remarkable chapters of that story remain to be rediscovered. The genetic memory preserved in the Black Irish population challenges us to reconsider not just what we know about human migration and capabilities, but how we know it. It reminds us that historical narratives are shaped by power, perspective, and the limits of available evidence. Most importantly, it cautions us against the arrogance of assuming that our ancestors were less capable, less intelligent, or less innovative than we are. We stand on the shoulders of giants, Dr. Kennedy concludes, even when we have forgotten their names, their achievements, and the journeys that brought us where we are today. The Black Irish carry the genetic memory of one such forgotten journey, a testament to human courage, innovation, and the unquenchable drive to explore the unknown, no matter how forbidding. In the coils of DNA that give the Black Irish their distinctive appearance lies a profound truth. Our history is far richer, more complex, and more extraordinary than we have allowed ourselves to believe. And the greatest voyages of discovery may be those that reveal not new lands, but the lost achievements of our own past.